Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahabushai, Bahasham, Brakahakodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video. And in this video, I'm going to start it off with an article from nationalreview.com titled, Biden, Americans Should Not Be Worried About Nuclear Conflict, which shows a complete disconnect from the reality of the situation out here, according to the scriptures, because it's biblical prophecy for a nuclear conflict to take place during World War III. This is Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, speaking of World War I, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter, World War II, which is past, and World War III, which is quickly coming upon us, and it will go nuclear. And the two main combatants during this upcoming third woe will be the United States of America and Russia. And Russia is actually going to succeed in getting a first strike on the United States of America. The United States of America is going to be completely wiped off the face of the map. It's going to become the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. And not only are Russia's allies like China, Iran, and North Korea going to shoot nuclear missiles onto the U.S. as well, but the United States of America's own allies, such as Britain, France, Germany, and these other NATO nations at some point during World War III are going to turn against the U.S. and ally themselves with Russia to altogether shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. Revelation chapter 17, verse 16, and the 10 horns referring to the EU or European Union, beginning with the first 10 common markets of the EU, back when it was known as the European Economic Community, that thou sawest upon the beast being NATO, these shall hate the whore that rideth upon the beast, the United States of America, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, nuclear fire. This is 2 Peter chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. And what's going to melt the elements with fervent heat and burn up the works in the earth? Nuclear missiles. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved by nuclear fire, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? Speaking to you sincere Akim and Akwat out there, you should be in the manner of hastening for these things to come, because with this coming nuclear destruction, that means our salvation. Because after the dust settles, that's when the kingdom of heaven is going to be established on the face of the earth, ruled by the true children of Israel, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, beginning with the elect of the nation of Israel, the 144,000 and the rest of the righteous 1/3, who are going to be saved from this nuclear fire when Yahawashi Hamashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ, makes his second coming and beams up the elect onto the chariots, which people ignorantly refer to as so-called UFOs. Verse 12, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of the Most High, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat from that nuclear fire. So just by biblical prophecy alone in the scriptures, we can clearly see that Biden and the majority of you people out there don't know what you're talking about. So at this point, everybody should keep their mouths shut. The only people that should be speaking and the only people that have any truth are the prophets of the Most High, the men of the Lord, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this. So once more, Biden, Americans should not be worried about nuclear conflict, but the prophecies say otherwise. President Biden said Americans should not be worried about a potential nuclear conflict on Monday while White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki decried Russian President Vladimir Putin's escalatory rhetoric regarding the use of nuclear weapons. And whenever you read the news about nuclear conflict, who are the two nations they always mention? The United States of America and Russia. Putin ordered the Russian military to put nuclear forces in a special regime of combat duty on Sunday. However, it was not clear if the directive had any practical effect, according to the Associated Press. The implied threat comes amid the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine and economic sanctions on Russia imposed by the U.S. and European nations. On Monday, as the President and First Lady Jill Biden exited a White House event marking Black History Month, CBS News reporter Nancy Cortez asked the president whether Americans should be worried about nuclear war. No, Biden replied. Here's her tweet. Shortly afterwards, a reporter asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki if the U.S. has changed its nuclear posture in response to Putin's directive. Neither the United States nor NATO has any desire or intention for conflict with Russia, Psaki responded, which is a complete and utter bullshit. This whole situation with Ukraine has been orchestrated by the United States of America and NATO to drag Russia into a military conflict. The reason Russia made a military incursion into Ukraine was to protect the people in the two breakaway republics he recognized in Luhansk and Donetsk of the Donbass region, because for the past 8 years, the Ukrainian government has been bombing those peoples in the Donbass region, sniping them, shooting them, and committing all other military atrocities against them. And they've been pleading for Russia to come and help them. They want to be a part of Russia. They share a lot of the similar customs to Russia and speak the same language. So for the past 8 years, Putin has been sitting by, hearing their pleas, and seeing the Ukrainian government, which, remember, Zelensky was a puppet set up by the United States of America, committing atrocities against those people. So that's why Putin moved in. And now what you're seeing with the Western mainstream media is that they're taking every advantage they can with this situation to demonize Russia and Putin and make him seem like some new Hitler that's just going into Ukraine to take it over without no context. And it's been, and you've been seeing over the past couple of days that a lot of the information that's been coming out of the mainstream media was fake news. That so-called Russian tank that ran over that Ukrainian car with the old man in it was found out to be a Ukrainian tank that lost control and hit that car. The ghost of Kiev was found out to be a complete fabrication. Some of the footage you've been seeing of the Russians attacking the Ukrainians was actually old footage, not even dealing with the Russians, or footage from video games like Arma. And then there were images of the Ukrainian President Zelensky in combat gear on the front lines, said to be with the troops against the Russians, and that was found out to be a fabrication. That was footage from a couple of years ago of Zelensky merely observing the border of Russia and Ukraine. You can't believe anything that's coming out of this Western media. Neither the United States nor NATO has any desire or intention for conflict with Russia, Psaki responded, and best believe that the U.S. and NATO have been enhancing and changing their nuclear posture with regards to Russia. We think provocative rhetoric like this regarding nuclear weapons is dangerous, adds to the risk of miscalculation, should be avoided, and we will not indulge in it. We are assessing President Putin's directive, and at this time, we see no reason to change our alert levels, Psaki added, warning, however, of the significant danger and escalatory rhetoric. But it's out of everybody's hands. It's ultimately through the will of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai to build these nations up, to put them in that military mindset, that confrontational mindset, to eventually shoot nuclear missiles at each other to fulfill biblical prophecy, that third woe, where the elements shall melt with fervent heat and the works in the earth shall be burned up. Now let's get back to these precepts. This is Joel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 1. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh cometh, for it is nigh at hand. And if you have that spiritual eye salve, you can clearly see that the day of Yahweh is very nigh at hand. As we just read from that article, and just what you're hearing in the news lately, you're hearing talks of nuclear war, nuclear conflict, nuclear missiles, nuclear destruction, World War III, etc., etc. We're living in those times, the last seconds of the last days of the rulership of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites or the so-called white people, before the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven, ruled by the children of Israel. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There had not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. And that great people and a strong is talking about these nuclear missiles, and where it says there had not been ever the like, that's referring to how these nuclear weapons came about very recently, beginning with those 2 atomic bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima during World War II. And where it says neither shall be any more after it, when the time comes for these nations to shoot their nuclear missiles, every single nuclear missile is going to be fired. There won't be any left in these silos or other launch platforms. And then, after the dust settles, that's when Yahushai Hamashiach and those 144,000 hunters who were fishers on this side, being prophets and waking up the elect, are going to begin enslaving you heathen nations. And we're never going to allow you to build weapons of war like this anymore. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. And that fire that devoureth before them is that warhead at the front of the missile. And that behind them a flame burneth is the rocket booster on the back of the missile. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them. The land looks normal. You have cities and parks and forests, animals, people, life going on as it usually does. And behind them a desolate wilderness. Yeah, and nothing shall escape them. That desolate wilderness, after those nuclear missiles detonate, they're going to turn the land into a wasteland, like Mad Max or Fallout. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Still speaking of these missiles, because what you have to remember is that when the prophets like Joel saw these visions thousands of years ago, they didn't know what a modern day nuclear missile was, so they described it the best way they could with what they knew during their times, ancient weapons of war, like horses and horsemen and chariots, flying swords, bows and arrows, spears, javelins, you name it. Before their face, the people shall be much pained. When they hear those sirens going off and seeing those nuclear missiles flying through the sky, they're going to be much pained and in a panic, knowing that their death by pain is at hand. All faces shall gather blackness, or ash, or soot. These people getting burned up by these nuclear missiles. But now I'm going to close it out in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem, the children of Israel, who were again the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, all these heathen nations that have fought against them. And at the top of that list are you Edomites, or so-called white people, especially from the United States of America. And like I said earlier in the video, the United States of America is going to be the only nation that's going to get wiped off the face of the earth. When those nuclear missiles hit this place, it's going to become the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland where only desert creatures will dwell in. And it's going to stand as an eternal memorial as to what a wicked kingdom looked like, how not to govern the earth, and what the judgment and punishment was for afflicting the apple of the Most High's eye, the children of Israel. Now let's read what this plague is that the Most High will smite all the people that fought against Jerusalem with. Their flesh shall consume away while they stain upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. These people getting burned by these nuclear missiles, their skin melting off their bones. And a perfect visualization of this was that dream that Sarah Connor had in Terminator 2, where the nuclear missile struck, and when she was holding on to that chain link fence and started getting burned by those nuclear missiles, her skin was literally ripped off of her skeleton, her flesh consuming away while she stood upon her feet, while her eyes consumed out of their holes and her tongue consumed away out of her mouth. And while we are hearing talks of nuclear conflict in the news right now, just know that these nuclear missiles won't be fired to the ends of the earth until after the Charagma, the MOTB, the RFID/NFC, MICROCHIPIMPLANT in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 to 18 is mandatorily implemented. It will not happen before that. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. As we can clearly see, we're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.